Hello friends, it's your buddy Nick here with Game with the Guys. We're joining Speldexia up here atop the Grand Archives. Actually, this section is back onto Lothric Castle, and we're about to fight the Twin Princes. And right outside their door we do see the sun, all blacked out. So, I took off my bow. I need that back for just a moment. Here on this door, we see what I believe to be images of the three pillars of the three pillars of the king's rule. We've got the High Priestess, we've got the Lothric Knight, and then this. Is this the Scholar? We saw the imagery that looked a lot like this back down on top of the archives, but it appeared to be melted away. Much like, let's see, I don't have any of the images here. They're all broken down, other than the image of the king. Oh, there's these images of what I believe are scholars, and then there was kind of the main one that was in the light. And I think that this is what it looked like if it was not destroyed like the other ones, or melted like the other ones. So inside here, we do have a throne room, and it's very pretty except for this rug that is all tattered out. And on either side of this door, and I want to point out once again, you see the sun right outside the door, we have this very interesting image. And you see at the top there's a crown symbolic of royalty. There are angels on either side, and we see this central figure. And it's very hard to tell if that is a male or female character. The thing it actually reminds me most of is the image we saw down on the high wall of Lothric. It appears to have the hood very much like the Hood of Prayer, and then these sorcerer robes. But we can't tell if this is male or female. The belt line makes it look like it might be female, so it's very hard to say what this might be. Either side here we have people wearing crowns. Looks like two men and a woman there. These figures seem to be younger, also wearing crowns. Maybe these are kings and queens, and these are princes and princesses. And down here we have what appears to be maybe common folk, all revering this one person. And this guy actually looks like he's flipping the bird at it, but that's probably not real at all. That's probably just my imagination. So in here we see sort of a crown top to this area, and there is Prince Lothric hanging out there. And for those of you that played, Lorian is probably hiding out on one of these edges over here. And let me just go ahead and get rid of this. And I want to talk a little bit about Lorian, or actually, let's talk more about Lothric. We'll start there. So we're going to hear Prince Lothric speak, or King Lothric actually, as the case is now. And he's voiced by Harry Lister Smith. And you might recognize his voice because he also did Gwendolyn's voice back in Dark Souls 1, which is kind of an interesting connection because now Harry Lister Smith is doing the youngest son's voice from both royal families who are very powerful in magic, but are considered disappointments by both of their fathers. And actually, Ocelot is younger, but we never hear Ocelot's voice. So, we're going to see Lothric using a lot of spells, kind of a homing magic missile and a what looks like a golden soul spear. And these spells will actually look a little bit familiar. When we look at the fight with Lorian first, the two segments of the fight are actually pretty similar, except for Lothric's spells. As far as strategy goes, we're going to see what we want to do is, number one rule, don't get greedy. Dodge the attack, then attack once. Wait for him to attack again, dodge that, attack once. and just keep doing that through the entire fight. It's a very simple strategy, but it's a very difficult fight. If you were to take a look at the Japanese version of Dark Souls 3, the translation of the bosses for this fight are actually older brother Prince Lorian and Prince Lothric. So just slightly different there. And if you are having some difficulties with this fight, we do have Cirrus is available for this fight. And if we come out here, hopefully none of these Lothric Knights are still running around. I don't want to have to get into any trouble. We mentioned before that Orbeck is also available for this fight. So if you're having a little trouble, you can bring one of those guys in. And if these Lothric Knights are giving you any trouble, just run in here. He's not going to follow me too far. He's not going to follow me too. He's not going to follow me too far. And there, he stopped. All right, let's listen to the. Oh, come on, man! Seriously? Oops. All right, let's get into this fight. I wanted to show you a little something funny that you can do. You can kind of mess with Lorian a little bit by turning invisible. So we'll do that.
Oh dear. Another dogged contender. Welcome, unkindled one, purloiner of cinders. Mind you, the mantle of Lord interests me none. The fire-linking curse, the legacy of lords, let it all fade into nothing. You've done quite enough. Now have your rest.
Lorian can't see me because I'm invisible. So at this point, I'll buff up. Put this on. Here we go. In a moment, he should finally... You're going to see us at any point here? Still hasn't seen me. Maybe I should have waited to buff up. There he goes. Alright, so what was I saying? Let him attack. Dodge. Dodge. Attack back. That is the entire fight. And... that one is actually really hard to dodge. And I probably won't be talking very much because I really need to concentrate on this one. That one is actually one of the easier ones to dodge. And it's best to get in the habit of getting behind him and not getting smashed on your head like that. If you do get injured too much, just roll away to the best of your ability and get out of the reach of his attacks. Then just come right back in and just continue on the same method. Oh. I got too greedy. And that was my number one rule. Don't get greedy.
Oh, dear brother. I'm on my way. Brother, unyielding sword of Lothric's prince. Rise if you would. For that is our curse.
Here, oh, you just want to dodge all of the sorceries, so don't worry about attacking at this part. Just, oh, come on. I hate how long the healing mechanic takes. Oh, he's doing the big one. And dodge. Oh, I still got hit by it. Oh. When Lorian does that big slam, that's when Lothric will almost always shoot his soul spear at you. So watch out for the his projectile slam, not that overhead one. Oh, what am I doing? I'm getting away from this one. Dodge that. Get ready to dodge that. Oh. Oh, come on. This healing mechanic. Oh. Just dodge, dodge, dodge. I'm gonna die. Dodge! Oh, it hit a candlestick. Oh.
This spot marks our grave, but you may rest here too, if you like. Dear brother.
So if you take out Lorian, Lothric will come off and revive him. And... oh! Oh man, I got super punished by trying to talk right there. Ah! But then the fight kind of just continues, as usual, until you take out Lorian himself, or I'm sorry, Lothric himself. And remember this part, just keep dodging. Don't worry about attacking here. And if you get good angles, you can actually hit both of these guys at once here. And hopefully not run into big overhead slams like that. So, little sparklies come out, just keep dodging, don't worry about attacks. And I didn't follow my own advice and got punished. And this should take out Lothric.
My words, Ashen One. You remain among the accursed.
Ugh. So as I said, that is a very difficult fight with just an easy strategy. But the question is, can you can you get through the strategy? So yeah, I died, but you see that kind of following the idea of just Lorian has the big sweeping attacks, and if you just dodge through it, you know, he usually does 1 or 2 attacks at a time. He very, very rarely has a third attack in his combo. Just go through those and hit 1 time. And you saw the times that I really got damaged was when I tried to hit him 2 times instead. And that just really doesn't work. So we can light the bonfire here, and we'll see in this room that there are tons and tons and tons of white feathers. So this, they're probably angel feathers. We saw the imagery leading into this room. We know about Gertrude. The question is, are these angel feathers, are they friendly angel feathers, or are they enemy angel feathers? There's nothing really to say that the twins here have anything against the angelic faith. They don't really seem to have much faith in anything. We can head back to Firelink and take a look at their stuff, and there's some new missions that are opened up to us, so we're going to take care of that. But I am just very thankful to be done with this fight, and I'm super excited to get on with some new exciting stuff here. So let's head back to Firelink. I was just thinking how the Twin Princes kind of remind me of Raceland and is it Cameron? I don't remember his name, but twin brothers from the Dragonlance series, and one was a frail little magician and the other one was a very strong warrior, and so those guys kind of remind me of them. Let's see, we first and foremost should take a look at the cinders here. Cinders of a lord left by Prince Lothric. If the lord will not return to his throne, kill him and bring him back. Let's see. The Lothric bloodline was obsessed with creating a worthy heir, and when this proved impossible, resorted to unspeakable means. Suffice to say, the path to linking the fire is a cursed one indeed. So this is very odd that we get Cinders of a Lord here, because Lothric never linked the fire. He refused to link the fire. And so this kind of makes us question these other ones here on whether or not they link the fire too. It doesn't always explicitly say that they link the fire. Like with Yorm, we know that it says when he became a Lord of Cinder. So it never really... There's not really a lot of information that explicitly says that they link the fire, but that they are in fact just Lords of Cinder. Up until this point, we kind of assumed that they all link the fire until we meet Prince Lothric, who we know didn't link the fire. And, it says here, the path to linking the fire is a cursed one indeed. And Lothric and Lorian shared a curse. And we see that, when Lorian... or Lothric whispered into Lorian's ear about, for that is our curse, and we saw how they were bound together in a sense, and we'll see this similar thing in their souls, the soul of the twin princes, and you can kind of see there that there's two distinct souls there, but they're one. And so when Lorian would die, Lothric would bring him back. And so it seems that if Lorian died, he was tied to Lothric and couldn't die unless Lothric also died. And so that's how we eventually killed him. And there's actually a glitch that can happen in the game where you kill Lothric and quit the game before you ever get the soul or the cinders. And it's called the Lorian glitch. And I'll just kind of show you a little bit here. You can go back in and you've beaten them, but Lorian is still around, and eventually you can kill him. But then Lothric will come back, but you've already got their soul and their cinder by this point, and so it's just really weird. You can actually get Lorian to chase you around. I wasn't able to get him out of the throne room, but there's a very particular attack that you have to get him to do, and he'll come out of the throne room and you can have him chase you all over the place. It's pretty ridiculous. But let's look at their souls here. The two princes rejected their duty to become Lords of Cinder, and we see that word duty. A lot of time it is, connected with linking the fire, but duty, everybody in this game seems to have a job that they need to fulfill. Let's see, it says, they rejected and then settled down far, far away to watch the fire fade from a distance. I don't really know how far away they went because they were in the Lothric throne room. So, yeah, about that. But it really seems like they mean far away from where it is, where the destination is to link the fire. And we see here, a curse makes their souls nearly inseparable. And we talked a little bit about their curse before, and we're going to see a little bit more about it when we look at the items that we can gain from their soul. So if we talk to Ludleth here, and first thing we can do is look at Lothric's holy sword. This is Prince Lothric's straight sword, blessed by Emma with potent magic, and we all know that she is the high priestess. You can get a look there. It has a little bit of, interestingly enough, faith requirement. Let's see. Young Lothric was meant to be a champion and was expected to wield this platinum sword, but some things will remain distant dreams forever. And just that last little bit, it just really sounds like when you hear your parents say, "I'm not angry, I'm just disappointed. Some things are going to remain a distant dream forever." Where is it? There it is. Here is Lorian's greatsword. This is the other item we can get here. Ultra Greatsword of Lorian, Prince Lothric's older brother, cast in smoldering molten steel and stained black. Before Lorian embraced his brother's curse, he was a knight who single-handedly slayed the demon prince. Is that like the son of the old demon king? I'm not really sure who that is. But the victory eternally scorched his sword with flame. Now, this almost sounds like Lorian was kind of seeking attention because his brother was the favorite and the one destined to link the fire. So Lorian went out, "Hey, look at me, I can kill demons." And it just didn't, it didn't turn out the way that he wanted it to. But I've also heard people describe that a lot of times with royal families that the eldest son, the idea is for them to inherit the throne. And so it was probably that Lorian was to inherit the throne, and Lothric then would sacrifice himself to save the kingdom and link the fire. So that's probably what was going on there. Now, if you actually collect both of these swords, so this you'll have to do this in New Game Plus, you can give these two to Ludleth, and he will give you the opportunity to create the Twin Prince's Greatsword. It combines the two swords, the two swords together, so you lose both of them. And like I said, in order to do that, you really have to be in New Game Plus. If we look at the description of that sword, it says, "A sword forged from the reunion of the inseparable swords born from the souls of Lothric and Lorian, the twin princes. Their union is rooted in a curse and perpetuated by grief." And what I want to know is, if these swords are so inseparable, how can they ever be reunited? How are they separated in the first place? Anyway.
Now.
We can also run over and grab Lorian's set from the Handmaid. So if we come in here, and let's see, where is it? Where is it? It starts here with his helm, and I'll just quickly go through. You can see how the defenses stack up there. And if you notice on the gloves there, they almost kind of look like the pointed gloves from a lot of the Irithyll sets. But anyway, let's start here. The armor of Prince Lothric's older brother Lorian. This black-dyed brass helm is patterned with flame, and so that's kind of reminiscent of his sword. Lorian, raised as a knight, is said to have been left mute and crippled by his younger brother's curse. It is also said that Lorian, in fact, wished it so. So why would Lorian wish it to be this way? Was it because he was seeking attention? No, I don't think so. I think that because he wanted to be closer to his brother, and with the curse and the downfall that came with it, they basically became whole between the two of them. And so I think that that's probably why he wished it so. Something that I forgot to grab.
Be sure.
I forgot all about our buddy Orbeck. And after you complete his quest line, you can run over to the Grand Archives. And here amongst a great big stack of books, we find Orbeck. Hollowed out, dead. And we get his ashes. And we've looked at his ashes a little bit before, so I'm not going to... Well, I'll just pull him up real quick and you can take a peek at that. But this tells us again about his history of being an assassin and wanting acceptance into the Dragon School. A sad story that we talked about a lot last time. And now let's go back to Firelink.
Ah, how
And we can give the handmaid the ash.
Warm umbral ash have we here. It's as if thy fate were taken.
And this is the same thing she says for any NPC whose ash you give to her. So, oh, she's so disturbing. And now you see we've got all of the spells that Orbeck had available for us. All of those spells are available, and I actually did want to get his armor. It's an armor that I really like the look of. Where did it go? It's the Clandestine set. And I'm sure that yeah, here it is. I'm sure we talked a little bit about this before.
Ashen one.
I don't want to hear anything else out of you. So, traditional coat of the Vinheim Dragon School, normally a deep blue color, this black variation is a sign of a sorcerer engaged in surreptitious work. Yeah, and that describes Orbeck. He was an assassin, and so I think that this one actually looks really, really cool with the arms and legs from the ninja set, the Shadow set. And so this is going to be the set that Spelldexia is going to rock for the rest of the time, because I think it looks cool. Might have to change out the headwear, though. This one, nah, it's alright. Put this one on for now. Looks kind of silly. Mostly I just want this door to open up so we can talk about the other stuff going on. Along with Orbeck's last quest, or quest line spot being the Twin Princes, it is the... It's the same thing for Cirrus. And here we find her body and her talisman. So let's take a look at her talisman here. There it is. The Sunless Talisman. Talisman given to the Knights of the Sunless Realms, who serve the Nameless Moon. Scales with intelligence, which is rare for a miracle catalyst, but makes it compatible with dark. In the Sunless Realms, this fact is related first as an initial warning. Visually, this resembles the Dark Moon Talisman from Dark Souls 1, which makes a lot of sense. And the sun is associated with miracles, the moon with magic. So it being sunless, it, kind of makes sense that it scales with both, I guess. It mentions sun, but it's sunless, so that would mean maybe the moon, so scales with both. Anyway, the scaling on this talisman is really odd. Intelligence scaling only impacts dark miracles, and all other miracles only really scale with the faith stat, and you can take a look at that there. So, Cirrus is down here. I'm using my left hand to control this. Cirrus is down here, and the reason why she's died, just like with Orbeck, she's completed her duty. Just Orbeck had found everything he'd ever hoped and dreamed of, and so he died. We're seeing that a lot with the characters, the undead characters of this game. Cirrus had the duty of killing her grandfather, and when she did after we helped her with that, she said, "At last my grandfather will rest in peace, and I can die." Then she avowed herself to aid us in completing our duty of linking the fire. But collecting all of the cinders of the lords was as far as she could go, and so that actually completed her second duty. And now she lays dead here on this grave where we also found the sunset shield. So whose grave is this? And I actually believe that this grave belonged to her grandmother. And so that would explain why the shield was here. That would explain why she's here. That would explain how easily the handmaid was able to find the bouquet that was meant for the grandmother. It was set there likely by Cirrus, and then this kooky handmaid acquired it somehow. And we should also now be able to get Cirrus's armor set. I might have to reload. Nope, it's right here. Attire of a knight from the Sunless Realms, known for the resistance to both magic and the dark. Formed of a silk veil and silver headband, sunless knights serve the nameless moon, and perhaps for this reason, the attire casts a feminine silhouette. So we see this silver headband here. A lot of times silver is associated with moon, is also associated with magic. And we see with the feminine silhouette, well, this armor did belong to a woman, but because it is also associated with the Sunless Realms and the Nameless Moon, this is an association of Gwyn and her being a Blade of the Dark Moon. That also adds to her association to Gwyn. And we know that Gwyn was actually raised as a daughter, and so he kind of shows this idea of the feminine silhouette. He was also given the reversal ring, which would give him more of a feminine stance. And let's see. Okay, no, it says it there at the top. I thought it was just on this armor. But it says it's resistant to both magic and dark. And if we look in there, it has, as far as the elemental resistances, magic and dark are going to be the highest ones there for the entire set. And I kind of wonder if this actually has any kind of meaning because of like Sullivan and Aldrich that are in the area. They need, it would normally have this resistance to magic, but because there's also the idea of dark being present, if it needed that dark resistance, or maybe, like her chime said that it is useful for dark. Maybe all of this is kind of useful for dark, though we never really see Cirrus do anything that is dark related. She pretty much just uses miracles. So the idea of magic with her isn't really a forefront. But now that we have completed Cirrus's quest, you can actually do all of Leonard's quest also after you complete Cirrus's quest. So we know that Cirrus broke up with us once she found out that we were a Ring of Rosaria and had joined in on Leonard's quest. But you can actually do the whole quest line after you've completed everything with Cirrus. So at this point, we're actually going to go ahead and take a look at the rest of Leonard's quest. And it is super, super interesting. So let's head on over to Orlando. And we're going to have to pick up here with Fake because he was the one actually doing the Fingers quest line. And Speldexia was doing the Cirrus quest line. Oop, need to get out of here. So, if you've played Dark Souls 1, this is all going to be very, very familiar. It seems like we are redoing Lothric's quest. So, at this point, we don't know who we're going to find on the other end here. As we say, it says, invade the world of Rosaria's killer. And we don't know who that is. Yes, we do. Let's go fight him.
Well, never expected to see you here. Couldn't resist her any longer in all her festering glory. And now you want to ravage her soul as well. I sowed the seeds, I'll prune the mess. I, Leonard, swear so on my vows to the goddess.
So it was Leonard that did it, and you can see that he's wearing an obscuring ring. And I'm actually going to let him kill me here because he has some very interesting dialogue. And if you listen to what he said before there, it really sounds like he's talking about basically trying to protect Rosaria's, or really just Rosaria. And that's why he's taken her soul. But he it seems like he thinks that we're somebody else. So
Beneath with you, my friend. The Knight of the Goddess does not die.
that's not the very interesting dialogue. The really interesting dialogue comes when we go back in a second time after he's killed us.
Well, back for more, are you? No ordinary man, are you? I knew it all along. And now you want to ravage her soul as well. You are no longer of use. You'll run free no more. I, Leonard, swear so upon my vows to the goddess. No one will despoil her soul. Certainly no beast wrapped in human skin.
Beast wrapped in human skin. He seems to have us mistaken for somebody else. And we can... Oh, that's his weapon attack. So that's not gonna be stopped by Vow of Silence. But it keeps him from doing his other spells. And I'll actually try to beat him, but he's one of the tougher NPCs.
Want with her soul. Isn't flesh enough for a sick beast?
Isn't flesh enough for a sick beast? Very interesting. Oh, I was checking to see if I could do it one more time, but I can't, so... I think that we've got all of his dialogue at this point, so I can kill him.
Blessed Rosaria.
And now he's dead. And we will gain a lot of good stuff. So let's take all of this back to Firelink and take another look at it. And I wanted to just talk about the dialogue that he uses, and we'll do that once we get back to Firelink. So he talks about a festering beast. Why do we want her soul? Wasn't flesh enough? He seems to have us confused with Aldrich. And judging by the location, that is right above Aldrich's boss room, so that seems like that might agree with it. Let's take a look at his weapon here. Ringfinger Leonhard's weapon of choice, a type of shuttle imbued with the power of the moon. And we saw him use the crescent blade skill on us, which is the power of the moon. Leonhard set out on a journey of rebirth, but decided instead to serve the goddess as a knight and inherited this weapon. And he mentioned that he was a knight when he killed us. But yeah, it's interesting that he calls himself a knight instead of just one of her fingers. We also get his very cool looking silver mask. Silver mask of Ringfinger Leonhard. In his youth, Leonhard suffered grave burns to his entire body. His face in particular, which he hid beneath this mask, was terribly scalded. He abstained from restoring these injuries after becoming a finger of Rosaria. And I talked a little bit about this when we first met him, that he was burned all over his body. But he seemed to be okay with that once he met Rosaria. And in here, we will also get... It'll be a little hard to find it because it's dark in here. I don't have enough souls to find anything. Where is it? Where is it? Oh, I was on one right here. Here's his garb. Leonard was born into royalty, which is believed to be the reason for his skill in both sorcery and swordsmanship. And that reminds me a lot of the royalty class, or the royal class from Demon Souls. They started off with the ability to use magic, and started off with, I believe it was a rapier. So swordsmanship and sorcery. So that kind of looks a lot like Leonard. And the silver on his mask, like the silver item that the royal wore in Demon Souls. Indeed, this dingy garb is in fact embroidered with gold thread, betraying its purpose as military wear designed for a noble. And it'll have similar descriptions on the other items here. These gloves also have the silver on
Ashen
them.
one. Oh.
So now we can take a look at Rosaria's soul, and if you didn't know, you can also transpose this. I almost said transmute it. But if we look at her soul, it is very oddly shaped. The soul of Rosaria, mother of rebirth, stolen by Riedenfear Leonhard. Return this to her extant corpse, and the Mother Rosaria will spring back to life. And it seems to me that Leonhard probably knew that, and that's why he was willing to kill her, because he knew that he could save her by holding her soul and giving it back to her later on, once he had defeated the invader that he thought was coming, which was Aldrich. She'll spring back to life as if nothing ever happened.
Aha.
So it's quite interesting what we can get if we try to transpose her soul. This item here. Special miracle granted by the Princess of Sunlight. Gradually restores a large amount of hit points for self and those in the vicinity. The miracles of Guinevere, loved as both mother and wife, bestow their blessing on a great many warriors. This is a similar description to the spell in Dark Souls 1, but with the addition of the loved as both mother and wife. So this miracle granted by Guinevere, Princess of Sunlight, one of two miracles that are deeply tied to Guinevere, Soothing Sunlight being the other. And what this spell will do is actually heals 10 hit points per second for 60 seconds. So that can actually be affected by the lingering Dragon Crest ring, but it will extend the length of time, but it'll just heal you the same amount. Now, why is this so interesting that this soul can be turned into Bountiful Sunlight? And we saw that Soothing Sunlight came from the Dancer, who we realized was actually a direct descendant of the old royals. This probably means that Rosaria is a direct descendant of the old royals too. And in Dark Souls 1, the Bountiful Sunlight description, it is very similar, but it starts with special miracle granted to the maidens of Guinevere, Princess of Sunlight, much like the way that this one starts. Now, why does Rosaria have this? Why does her soul turn into this? Well, I think it's because she's a daughter, or maybe granddaughter, or great-great-granddaughter of Guinevere. She is a direct descendant of the old bloodline. And not only do I think that she's the direct descendant of the old bloodline, and let me just preface this by saying that I've been waiting the entire playthrough to start talking about this stuff. This is like the point of me doing this playthrough. Rosaria is the Queen of Lothric. And at this point, I'm going to go through and I'm going to tell you all about the royal family as I interpret it from the items in the game. So as I mentioned, we fought the Dancer, and we found that she was a direct descendant of the old royals. We found that by her armor, and then the spell also very much associated with Guinevere, leading me to believe that she was the daughter. So this is why I'm thinking about Rosaria being a daughter of Guinevere, if not, maybe a granddaughter or whatever. It's a direct lineage, but we'll just, for the ease of things, call her the daughter. Now, why do I believe that Rosaria is not just a daughter of Guinevere, but also the Queen of Lothric? Well, let's start back in Irithyll while I was really dropping some hints. Okay, there we find a bunch of clues that point to the Queen of Lothric being Rosaria. First of all, we find the Divine Blessing, which we discussed at length at the time, and it described the Queen of Lothric being comparable to a goddess of bounty and fertility, and that's based on the Japanese description of the item. Now, the very fact that we find a divine blessing here suggests that the Queen of Lothric is a descendant of the old royal family. We also find the ring of the sun's firstborn, and that says he inherited the light of Gwyn, the first lord. This and many other item descriptions lead me to believe that the firstborn is basically Gwyn Jr. And I bring that up because, when I picked up the ring, I said that was probably a tiny hint at the identity of the Queen of Lothric. So I think that she, being Rosaria, is essentially Guinevere Jr., which explains the description on the Divine Blessing and why they're so comparable. If we think of the Queen of Lothric as Guinevere Jr. and the firstborn as Gwyn Jr., we'll actually see a lot of parallels with their characters, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Now, the smallest note from Irithyll that I talked about was the fact that the statues of the Queen are barefoot. Guinevere's statue is also barefoot in Anor Londo, but so is Rosaria. So just a little minor thing there. But I think that the biggest giveaway that we found in Irithyll, so from smallest to biggest here, is that Creighton, one of Rosaria's fingers, has a divine blessing. So he probably got it straight from the source, the Queen of Lothric. Now, if we look back at the magic stoneplate ring, this tells us that these rings are granted to the royal palace guards, and we only find these guards in two places, outside of Osiris's boss room and in the Cathedral of the Deep, basically protecting the path to Rosaria's room. And there's other clues here in the Cathedral of the Deep. Remember the iconography at top of the cathedral? I said that those symbols are strongly associated with Dionysus, who is the god of, among other things, fertility and harvest. Now, people would pray to Dionysus for bountiful, there's that word bounty, harvests, Guinevere being the icon of bounty and fertility. So Dionysus was also known for his strange story of his infancy, death, and rebirth. And there's a few different alternations in that, and I'm not really going to go into that, but he's known for this rebirth, hence Rosaria, mother of rebirth. So that's how that's related. And if we look back at the Archdeacon's skirt, it says that Klimt attended Rosaria, mother of rebirth, who he deemed a goddess. And isn't this an exact parallel to the line in the Divine Blessing that says the Queen of Lothric was initially revered as a goddess of fertility and bounty? How far off is a symbol of fertility and bounty to the mother of rebirth anyway? That's practically the same thing. So, the king may have his black hands, but the queen has her fingers. So let's talk a little bit about Rosaria's fingers. Now, with the obscuring ring, that mentions that Rosaria was robbed of her tongue by her firstborn. So who is that? And I think the biggest clue here are the mangrubs themselves. We see that the mangrubs protect Rosaria's bedchamber, but I also think that she uses them as spies, basically to check up on her children. We recently found one in the Grand Archives observing Gertrude's cell. But we also found one in, no shock here, Irithyll. And I think that this one was attempting to keep track of Rosaria's firstborn, but died along the way. Let's take another look at the mangrub staff. It says that the mangrubs have clearly been reborn, but as what? And I think that the image that they've taken from this rebirth is that of Rosaria's firstborn. So now if we take a look at the mangrub, it's got a humanoid top and then a long, thin, worm-like body. What do they look like? They look like cheap knockoff versions of Aldrich. Yes, I believe Aldrich is Rosaria's firstborn. And why do I think this? Let me explain further. Aldrich loves to eat people, as we've heard through many NPC dialogues and item descriptions. And what else is rumored to devour men? Well, Lothric Castle has that reputation, which the cell key clearly tells us. And wouldn't the Queen's firstborn live in or around the castle? Perhaps. Aldrich would eventually go on to crave the flesh of gods, but Aldrich, his hobby likely started with easy targets, children. And thanks to the Executioner set, we know that Horus was one of only 2 children to escape Aldrich's clutches. Now, Horus has a muffled voice, almost like he has no tongue. Would you agree? Now, without a tongue, you cannot call for help, you can't eloquently say anything, but you can still scream. So here's a little thing that I want you to try. Hold tightly onto your tongue and try to scream. You can totally do it, but you can't form precise phrases, like if you would say something like, "Please help me, I'm locked in the basement, Aldrich is trying to eat me." So, Aldrich's rings tell us how much he enjoyed luxuriating in the victim's screams. And by cutting out or eating the tongue first, he could get all of those delightful screams without the downside of the pathetic pleading for mercy. It's likely that Rosaria was meant to be Aldrich's victim as a transition from eating men to devouring gods. And as I said, Rosaria is likely probably a demigod and not really a true god. But she escaped, and much like Horus, she left unscathed, save for the fact that she's missing a tongue. Now, if we look back at the Obscuring Ring, we see that Rosaria was robbed of her tongue by her firstborn, and she has been waiting for their return ever since. Now, she wasn't waiting for a delightful reunion with her son. She knew that Aldrich would return to finish what he started. But so did Leonard, and that's why he took her soul for safekeeping. Now, Hawkwood tells us that Aldrich was once a right and proper cleric, yet he predominantly uses sorceries in his boss fight. We know that Aldrich's true home is Irithyll. Hey, that's where the Queen of Lothric is from. A land known for moon worship and magic. Like MacDonald and the Deacons, Aldrich also has the knowledge of both miracles and sorceries. He uses sorceries, and he also uses the miracle life hunt scythe in the fight. But the weapon that he uses in the fight is called the Golden Ritual Spear, and we looked at this earlier. This is a spear that can be used as a staff, but sorceries cast using this weapon channel the wielder's faith. With this, a right and proper cleric like Aldrich could cast sorceries with peak performance. Now, the sorceries that we see Aldrich use are very distinct, but where else do we see nearly identical sorceries? Well, back in Dark Souls 1, we see Gwendolyn use somewhat similar spells, but let's really focus on Dark Souls 3. Prince Lothric uses almost exactly the same homing soul missiles and soul spears that Aldrich does. The only difference is that Aldrich's ones are a deep color, probably because they're tainted by the deep, and Lothric's are not. Now, we also see Aldrich use a dark circular portal to teleport around the boss room. The Dancer of the Boreal Valley enters her boss room using a very similar portal. But you know who else teleports? Prince Lorian, but his portals are bright like Lothric's sorceries instead of dark like Aldrich's sorceries. Aldrich's sorceries and Lothric's are clearly similar, and they both would have had access to the largest wealth of sorcery knowledge in the lands, the Grand Archives. And I always thought it was a little strange that the Scholar's Candlestick, an item that boosts sorcery, has a faith requirement but no intelligence requirements. And we can also get a very similar item transposed from the soul of the Deacons of the Deep. That's called the Cleric's Candlestick. And this item also has a faith requirement, but scales with intelligence and can be used to cast sorceries. Now, that's a strange roundabout way to connect back to Aldrich, but there's another way that we can connect the Grand Archives to Aldrich. Now, remember the corpse that we found in front of the Grand Archives that had the key? That was Black Hand Goddard. And Goddard is a summonable phantom outside of Pontiff Sullivan's boss room. And Sullivan's soul tells us that he imprisoned Gwendolyn so that Aldrich could eat him. So we see this other connection between Aldrich and the Grand Archives here. Now, Sullivan's Outrider Knights seem to be stationed in very precise locations to probably protect Aldrich and his mysterious secrets. Vort blocks the way to the undead settlement. The first non-boss Outrider Knight we meet tries to keep us out of the Road of Sacrifices, both leading to Aldrich. Next, we find the Dancer of the Boreal Valley protecting the path into Lothric Castle, and another Outrider Knight not that far after. Now, the final one guards a very curious spell, and when I first brought this up, I said I would get back to it, and now I want to talk about this a little bit more in depth. Before we look back at the description, I want to point out that the Japanese version of this is essentially the same spell as Soul Geyser from Dark Souls 2. Now, in the English version of the game, it calls this a blasphemous spell that is a family heirloom of Lord Aldia's, but the Japanese version of the game refers it to his legacy rather than a family heirloom. So this is a sorcery imparted by the first of the scholars when Lothric and the Grand Archives were but young. So the scholars taught this spell, which is Aldia's legacy, basically from the beginning of the archives. Now, the first of the scholars of the first sin... okay, enough. Although Aldia is the scholar of the first sin, the early scholars that they're talking about here probably aren't Aldia, because we killed him. But if he or she, this first scholar, is teaching Aldia's legacy, they are probably very knowledgeable on Aldia's other teachings. Alright, so it says here, the first of the scholars doubted the linking of the fire, and was alleged to be a private mentor to the royal prince. So not only did Aldia doubt the linking of the fire, but he searched for a way to break free of the cycle entirely. And now, it says here that they were a private mentor to the royal prince. So this scholar, who knew very much of Aldia's legacy, put it into Lothric's head about not linking the fire and trying to break free. And this is probably how Lothric ended up cursing himself in much the same way that Aldia did. But this line, a private mentor to the royal prince, isn't specific to which royal prince they're referring to. This could be Aldrich, this could be Lothric or Lorian. But it could be all of them too, but it could also be Ocelot. So, who is Ocelot? Let me backtrack a little bit before I get into that. It's all related, I promise. If we look at Aldrich and Lothric, we see that neither one is too keen on the idea of linking the fire, as we discussed with Soulstream. Lothric just refuses to do it, but Aldrich, who is a Lord of Cinder, but there's no item description that clearly says that he linked the fire. Hawkwood just says, and they made him a Lord of Cinder, like he was forced into doing it. Aldrich's course of devouring gods and visions of a deep sea also make it sound like he is actively trying to break free from this cycle. This sounds a lot like the ideas of Aldia. But going along with this idea of getting away from the duty of linking the fire, there's another NPC who suggests that he is free and unchained. And he suggests that we too take some time from our duty of linking the fire. And who was that NPC? That is Ocelot 2.0 himself. He is known by you and me as Ringfinger Leonard. Yes, I believe that Ringfinger Leonard is actually Ocelot. So if we look back at Leonard's garb, it talks about how he was born into royalty, and the garb's gold embroidery, much like that on Lothric's Hood of Prayer, was designed for a noble. His crescent moon sword tells that his weapon was inherited and is imbued with the power of the moon. Who was this moon sword inherited from? It's possible that it was handed down from Gwendolyn, who is strongly associated with the moon, also making him part of the royal bloodline. The other option would be that Osiris gave it to him, his father. And we know that Osiris's Moonlight Greatsword explains that he was infatuated with the search for moonlight. Osiris was quite fond of his youngest, calling him my beloved Ocelot, child of dragons, and claiming of his greatness and his power, because he was infatuated with the moon, and Leonard also holds the power of the moon. Now, Osiris' soul tells us that he went mad trying to harness his royal blood for greater purpose, and then looking back at Lothric's cinders, it adds that when this proved impossible, Osiris resorted to unspeakable means. This is likely how, in his youth, Leonard suffered grave burns to his entire body, as described in his silver mask, also associated with moon and sorceries. Now, it's kind of ironic how much Osiris treasured Ocelot just for him to turn out to be a complete mama's boy. Looking back at his sword, it tells us that Leonard set out on a journey of rebirth, probably for 3 main reasons. He was horribly disfigured by his father's massive amount of pressure to become a worthy heir to the Lothric bloodline, and the fact that his mother had abandoned him, so he had no one to confide in and feel safe with. Now, his mask goes on to say that he abstained from restoring his injuries even after becoming a Finger of Rosaria. And why is that? Well, Leonard had a face only a mother could love, literally. And that's kind of a roundabout way on why he didn't change himself when he joined the Fingers. All this time he thought he was looking to be reborn, and he was probably thinking physically, and maybe a little bit mentally. But all he really wanted was to be reunited with his mother, a woman that truly cared for him. And that's why we see him taking such drastic measure to try to protect her from Aldrich. So that brings us back to Rosaria. And remember how I said that there were a few parallels between the Queen of Lothric and Gwyn's firstborn. Well, thinking again of both of them as being juniors, Gwyn warred against the dragon, but his firstborn does exactly the opposite. Spoiler alert, if you haven't gotten this far in the game, the firstborn befriends the dragons instead and has to assume a new identity because he is dropped from the annals of history. Now looking at Guinevere, she had a covenant called the Princess Guard, which was based in co-op as a means of linking the fire. While the Queen of Lothric, she also assumes this new identity. She also has a covenant, but its sole purpose is completely opposite. Its purpose is to invade and basically hinder your opponent from linking the fire. So those are the parallels there. We're seeing these similar things going on in the old bloodline and in the new bloodline. And yeah, that is my idea of the story. Reading the descriptions, this is how it's clearly laid itself out to me. If you have a completely different idea of the royal bloodline, please do tell me what your thoughts are. Is it crazy to think that Rosaria is actually the Queen of Lothric? Is Aldrich not her firstborn? It seems like blatantly, like just right, and well, I don't want to say right in front of our faces, but it seems like it's all right there to connect Aldrich as being the firstborn. I don't think that he's probably not Osiris's son. And that's why Osiris is probably a little bit jealous, and that's why he continues trying to boost his bloodline. But, you know, we talked about Ocelot when we fought Osiris, and, you know, I said that there's different theories on who Ocelot could be or what is going on with Ocelot. And I think that my theory makes a lot of sense. So if you've got a different one, please let me know. Hit up those comments down below if you thought that my theories are just wacky or you just had a little fun with them. Hit that like button and share this with your friends if you think they'll enjoy it too. But that's going to do it for this time. Yeah, I can. My duty is complete in a sense. I can die happy now because I've shared who I think that the royal family is. But I'm not done with this this playthrough yet, so I will continue on with that. So in the next one, whoo, all the big lore's behind us, so it's all just fun and games from here, and we will see you next time.